It was supposed to be a weekend getaway, a break from the stresses of everyday life. A group of 6 friends, each excited to leave the hustle and bustle behind, packed their bags and set off into the deep, wild woods for a camping trip. They'd been planning it for months, eager to bond and escape the distractions of technology and social media. The woods they chose were remote, tucked away from the nearest town, and surrounded by miles of untamed wilderness. But what started as an adventure quickly spiraled into a nightmare none of them would ever forget.
Whisper to your ear.
Chapter 1: The First Night. The group Eli, Maddie, Greg, Lavra, Tim, and Sarah arrived at the forest around late afternoon. The sun was beginning to dip beneath the horizon, casting long shadows across the trees. After setting up their tents, they gathered around the fire pit, roasting marshmallows and telling stories. They joked about ghost stories, laughed about their past, and reveled in the thrill of being away from the real world. But there was an unsettling atmosphere in the air, something subtle but present. Eli, who was always the skeptic, brushed it off as his imagination. The woods were peaceful, after all, and the evening was calm. That night, as they sat by the fire, Greg went off to the edge of the campsite to use the restroom. When he returned, he mentioned that he thought he had seen something strange in the trees. A figure, standing still and watching. He wasn't sure if it was just a shadow or a trick of the light. They all laughed it off, but the unease remained, lingering in the air like the smoke from the fire. Later, as they settled into their tents, the wind picked up, and the sound of rustling leaves filled the air. It was nothing out of the ordinary, but as the night wore on, each of them felt an inexplicable sense of dread. The kind of dread that made them glance over their shoulders, listening for sounds that didn't belong. Chapter 2: The Disappearances Begin. By morning, everything seemed normal again. The sun was shining, birds chirped, and the forest felt alive. But something had changed. They couldn't quite put their finger on it, but the woods felt different. The silence was thicker, as if something was waiting. It wasn't until the second night that things began to unravel. Tim had been missing when the group woke up the next morning. His tent was still set up, but he was nowhere to be found. At first, they thought he had wandered off in the night, maybe sleepwalking or heading to another part of the campsite. But hours passed, and no sign of Tim. They called out his name, searched the woods, and retraced their steps, but there was no trace of him. His belongings, his clothes, even his phone, were still at camp. It was as if he had simply vanished into thin air. The search went on all day, but they found nothing. That night, fear began to settle in. There were only 5 of them left. They huddled in their tents, unsure of what to do next. They tried to keep their spirits high, chalking it up to an accident or someone playing a prank. But deep down, they knew something wasn't right. That evening, as darkness crept over the forest, Maddie heard a noise outside her tent. A soft, scratching sound, followed by whispers that seemed to come from all directions. She tried to ignore it, but the noise grew louder. More frantic. It was as if something was trying to get in. When she finally gathered the courage to peek outside, her breath caught in her throat. In the distance, she saw the shadowy figure again, the one Greg had mentioned seeing on the first night. But this time, it was closer. She screamed, waking the others, but by the time they gathered their bearings, the figure had disappeared, and once again, Tim was gone. Chapter 3: The Map. As the days passed, panic set in. One by one, the remaining campers vanished without a trace. First, Greg disappeared while they were in the middle of preparing breakfast. Then, Lavra was gone, leaving only her half-eaten sandwich and an empty tent. Only Eli, Sarah, and Maddie remained. Each night, the whispers grew louder, and each morning, another friend was gone. The forest was alive, but not with the sounds of nature. It was something darker, something ancient, malevolent, and hungry. On the fourth day, Sarah stumbled upon something strange in one of the abandoned tents, an old, weathered map. It was unlike anything she'd seen before. It didn't show the normal trails or paths they had followed into the woods. Instead, it showed a set of coordinates that led deeper into the forest. There was something about the way the map was drawn, almost as if it had been crafted by hand hundreds of years ago. With no other choice, the three survivors decided to follow the map. They packed their things and set out, determined to find out what was happening to their friends and why they were being hunted. Chapter 4: The Abandoned Campsite. The map led them through the dense forest, winding trails that seemed to shift and change with every turn. The deeper they ventured, the more oppressive the air became. It felt as if the forest itself was alive, watching, waiting for them to make a wrong move. Hours later, they stumbled upon an old, abandoned campsite. The fire pit was long cold, and the tents were torn and decaying. It looked like no one had been there in decades, maybe longer. But something about it felt eerily familiar. As they explored the site, they found evidence of something much darker than they could have ever imagined. Buried beneath the soil, they uncovered old bones remains that had been untouched for years, maybe even centuries. As they dug deeper, they discovered a series of markings carved into the stone and trees around the campsite. Symbols that seemed to be tied to some ancient ritual. The realization hit them all at once. This wasn't just an ordinary forest. It was cursed, haunted by something that had claimed lives for generations. Suddenly, the wind picked up. Howling through the trees, and a deep growl echoed from the shadows. The air grew thick, and the ground beneath them trembled. The ancient evil they had uncovered was awakening. As they turned to flee, Eli, Sarah, and Maddie realized that the curse had already claimed them too. They were not just being hunted, they were part of a ritual. Every decade, a group of campers would wander into the woods, drawn in by the same whispers and promises of adventure. And every decade, they would disappear, becoming part of the forest's dark legacy. The last thing they saw before the darkness took them was the shadowy figure, the same figure Greg had seen on the first night, standing tall and menacing, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly hunger. Chapter 5: The Truth. Years later, a hiker would stumble across the same abandoned campsite. And in the distance, through the trees, they would hear the whispers of those who had come before. The whispers of the disappearing campers, forever lost to the ancient, malevolent force that lurked deep within the forest. And somewhere, hidden among the trees, the shadowy figure would wait for the next group to wander too close. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button, subscribe for more nightmares, and share with someone brave enough to watch alone. See you. Bye.